All right, so this is going to air about a week from today or so a week before Election Day. With a week to go, what would you want voters to know about you?
Well, I'd want them to cut through all the stuff that they've seen on television. I mean, I'm not shy about saying this. My opponent has been pretty nasty in the things he said about me. He has cut and pasted my words. He's cropped my words. He's cut out part of speeches and not played the entire quotes that I've made. And he's outright told just lies about the wonderful daycare center that my wife and I ran for years here in Greensboro. And I'd want them to look past that, and I'd want them to look at the real issues in this race. We have traveled this state telling everybody the reason why we're running and what we're all about, and told people that we're not running to be some type of big shot leader or to climb some type of political ladder. We're running because we realize that there are challenges that this state faces. And a lot of those challenges go straight to the heart of the people of North Carolina and their experiences. You travel across this state, you see the scars all across this state that have been left by bad policies, things like NAFTA, and some decisions even that have been made here at the state level years ago that have destroyed industries and put people out of work. And we've seen that up close and personal, and we have experienced that. And I believe that this high time that this state had someone to go into office who understands the challenges of the people of North Carolina and are ready to answer those challenges. And that's the reason why we decided to run. And that's what I would hope that people would look at.
I like that you answered, like, what's your why already in that question, why you ran. So with that said, and you're talking about some of those things that face the state, what do you think is the biggest issue that is facing our state right now?
The biggest issue always is our economy. It is always the economy. And when people say, well, that's just one issue, I always answer and say, well, it is a single issue, but it's not a singular issue. When you're talking about the economy and you're working on the, quote, economy as the governor of this state, you have to look at the 5 pillars that this state's economy, and quite frankly, every economy is built on. Every economy is built on 5 pillars. Those 5 pillars are public safety, public education, healthcare, infrastructure, and housing. It's simple. You cannot have an economy without those things. Nobody wants to live in a place where you don't have a decent home, decent water and sewer and roads, a decent place to go see a doctor or go to the hospital, a place where you can educate yourself or your children, and you don't feel safe. You have to have those things strong in order to have a strong, healthy economy. And that the governor plays a unique role in those 5 pillars because the governor is the person who points.
Sorry. Oh, the light just went out. You were on a roll there. Sorry about that. Forget the batteries. We're just going to plug it in?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Right, and then it's the power.
Great.
All right, sorry about that.
All right, are we still rolling?
Yes, we're
Okay. With that said, you said 2 things, and I do want to talk about them. Greensboro, we've talked about this all for a long time, has a horrible housing problem, right? So does the whole state of North Carolina. So does the nation, really, right? Not affordable housing.
Sure.
The legislature has not said, hey, we can put a cap on any kind of rent or anything like that. If you were to become governor, what kind of help would you have for that?
Well, what I found in studying this entire thing about the, quote, housing crisis is this. Many of the places where you find out where there's a, quote, housing crisis, it comes directly from poor management of areas. When I say poor management, what I mean is this. We're putting undue burdensome regulations on home builders, on renters, things that are making it almost impossible for them to be able to actually make a living by renting and building. We have to remove those regulations. You look across the country with places that have the lowest regulations and the most sensible regulations have the best and most affordable housing. It's a fact. Governments oftentimes create their own problems by being over-regulatory and burdensome with taxes. We have to make sure that we remove those barriers from home builders and renters so they can rent affordably and build affordably, and people can afford the homes that they're building and renting.
Would you be for a rent cap or some sort?
No, I would not be, because I don't think we need to cap the rent. What we need to do is we need to cap ourselves. We don't need to cap the folks that are making a living. We need to cap the government and make sure that we're not overreaching. It's always a thing where we want to reach over and stifle the entrepreneur, the person that's actually helping to supercharge our economy. That's not the person we want to stifle. Governments need to take a step back and realize it's their role to be fiscally responsible, not with their money, but with the taxpayers' money. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that our regulations, number one, are sensible and are endowed with common sense, and number two, are not an overreach in order to just be a money grab to build revenue.
I just wonder, how do we do that as a government? Because the people who are charging the rent really are charging a whole bunch of rent.
And a lot of them are charging a lot of rent, but they have to charge the rent to overcome some of the things that they're facing, whether it be from their county, whether it be from their city, or whether it be at the state level with regulations. So we need to take a good look at that.
The other pillar you talked about was education, and so childcare is a big deal. There's not a lot of choices out there, and they're expensive. So what do you do as governor to help that out?
Well, we've talked to a number of daycare owners since we've been in this office, the lieutenant governor's office. And I think one of the boats that we're missing across the board is this. We're not including the people in the industries fully. Now, when I say that, what I mean is oftentimes if we include people in the industry, it's the people at the highest levels of the industry. But what we oftentimes miss out on is the most important link in things like daycare. One of the most important links in daycare are not the big conglomerate daycares that we see, the chains. One of the things that's most important to communities are small, privately owned daycare centers. They oftentimes are the lifeblood of communities. We need to get some advice and consent from those folks on the challenges that they face to bring solutions there. One of the biggest problems that those folks have right now is wages. They are struggling to compete with places like McDonald's and Chick-fil-A and other fast food restaurants that are paying anywhere between $15 and $20 an hour, and they're only able to afford to pay maybe 10 or 12 at the most. I believe as a legislature and as a governor in this state, we need to put our heads together with those folks and others to figure out a way where we can help those small businesses be successful. Because let's make no mistake about it. If you have, great to have the Toyotas, and it's great to have the big companies, but when folks go to work there, they're going to need daycare. And if we can't fill in that gap, and we can't make an investment to fill in that gap, we're going to find ourselves in a bad spot with our workers. Our workers are going to either choose not to go to work and lean on government assistance, or they're going to have to make some hard choices in their house. I think that we need to make some hard choices as a government to help those folks and fill in the gap. Now, what does that look like? I don't know, because I have not sat down with those people at length to come up with that plan. But I know that we can. We've met these challenges before in our state and our country, and we can meet them again if we have the right people at the help.
You had talked about the negativity of the ads, and I think we've all seen negative ads all of our life, but it seems like this year it is really ratcheted up.
It has, and it's very sad, because I've always said this. If you're a candidate for governor or a candidate for school board or a candidate for president, if you're going to spend 90% of your time kicking the legs out from underneath your opponent, it's kind of plain you maybe don't have enough legs to stand up on your own. I would think if you're such a great candidate, if you're such a fine and qualified candidate to be the governor or to be the president or be that state senator, you would have so many plans and so many agendas that you want to talk about and so many issues you want to talk about with your constituents that you would spend 95% of your time talking about your plans, talking about what you intend to do. But we don't see that a lot. What we see a lot of is people trying to besmirch other people's character to knock somebody else down, to ratchet themselves up. I think the people of this state, and quite frankly the nation, are starting to see through that. They're starting to see right through the heart of the matter. And they're starting to ask the essential question, what have you really done? What are you willing to do? What have you laid out as your plan to help the people? And when they don't see any substance there, oftentimes those negative ads don't work.
What is the one thing, if you were elected governor, what's the one policy or whatever that you really want to do, make sure that you get accomplished?
Well, I wouldn't say it's one thing in particular. We talked about those 5 pillars of our economy, and we talked about building an economy through those 5 pillars and how the government plays a role in that. But the ultimate goal here for me is this. One of the things, well, actually the thing that distressed me the most is when I was running for lieutenant governor, and I traveled to all 100 counties in this state. The disparity of economic opportunity in this state from one point of the state to the other. You go through Greensboro and Charlotte and High Point and Winston and Raleigh, and you see great economic opportunity everywhere you turn. But you head east and you head west, and all of a sudden you see what some people say is a lack of opportunity. What I see when I travel this state to the east and western part of the states is not lack of opportunity. I see opportunities not taken advantage of. It's time for this state to stand up and start taking advantage of those opportunities. So the ultimate goal here, through working through the governor's mansion and working with the legislature to continue to build our economy, is a dream that I have to build an economy in this state that spans from Murphy to Manio. That as you drive across this state, you don't see any more of those economically depressed places. You see vibrant places where people are making a great living right where they live, no matter what their zip code is. And that is the ultimate goal. And for me, being governor, I know I couldn't do that in 4 years or even 8 years. But many, many years from now, if I'm an old man and I look back and I say, hey, I was part of the team that started the process that made this state even greater and built this great economy that spans from Murphy to Manio, I think that probably would be my proudest accomplishment.
Let's talk about the abortion issue, because that's been all over the place, right? A lot of the ads that have been focused on you, as you have said, have put you in a certain light.
Sure.
And then there was this ad that your campaign came out with.
Sure.
And it was intimate.
Sure.
And it was heartfelt.
Sure.
And it showed a very different Mark Robinson.
Sure.
So where do you stand on abortion? Because what those 2 different ads show doesn't really add up.
Well, the most infamous one, the one about the keep your skirt down, which is one that I take high exception to because, it's funny to me, it's never been reported that right after I said keep your skirt down, I said keep your pants up, in the same breath almost. But, that was many years ago. That was when I was a private citizen. That was a Facebook Live post. I can tell you this, I have gone through a transformation when it comes to the issue of life. And I like to call the issue life because that's what I believe in. For years, I was very demonstrative about my stand on life, very demonstrative. And I think the reason I was that demonstrative because there was a little bit of anger inside of me over the issue because I'd suffered about what my wife and I had talked about. I'd suffered with that for so long. And I was so eager to try to get through to people, to try to help them to avoid making that mistake and going through the things that I'd gone through. But I was sitting in a crisis pregnancy center once, a couple years ago in Charlotte. And I was listening to those young women talk about the things that they do in that clinic to meet the needs of those young women that are in those crisis situations. And it's like God just tapped me on the shoulder and said, you're 100% right about how you feel about life, but you're coming at it the wrong way. This is what you need to be doing. You need to be meeting people's needs. You need to be meeting people where they are. You need to be talking to people. In short, he told me, it's like it came to me like, it came home to me like truth that I don't need to be a person who stands on stage and yells down at somebody and tells them they can't have an abortion. I need to be that individual who is willing to come off the stage and embrace that person and tell them why they should choose life. And I think that is my position. I need to be the person who is willing to embrace folks and tell them to choose life. But if they choose not to, you need to pull those folks even closer. Because one thing that I've discovered is there are a lot of folks out there that have needed aftercare after experiencing an abortion, and they haven't gotten. It's been like a secret that we've hidden. When my wife and I, when we revealed this to people, you can't imagine the amount of phone calls that I got from people who told us they had been through the exact same thing. So my personal opinion on abortion has not changed. On life has not changed. I am 100% pro-life. But as an elected official, I have a duty to put my opinion on the table with 120 House members and 50 senators. And what comes off of that is something called consensus. And we have to go with that. And right now our law is 12 weeks with exceptions for rape and incest, which I am fully in favor of. And that's the law that we have to follow. But while following that law, rest assured, we're going to do everything we can to partner with agencies that are trying to help people to choose life.
So you wouldn't be pushing for that 6 weeks? I know you had wanted that at first, but then the consensus came up to 12 weeks.
No, I'm a person who's when it comes to that, I let the legislature take the lead, because the legislature speaks for the people. And if the people speak to their legislators, and their legislators want to bring that issue back to the table and want to have that conversation about a 6-week life bill, we'll have that conversation. But if the people don't guide the legislature that way, and the legislature does not go that way, there are a lot of other things in this state that we've got to work on, and we intend to keep working on those.
You say conversation, and we are having a conversation.
Yes.
But what we have seen about you on ads, on TV, is a very fiery rhetoric.
Sure.
Even some of your campaign stops have been very fiery rhetoric. So where do you land? Are you that fiery rhetoric person, or are you this conversation person? And then how do you lead like that as a governor?
So I'm not really sure what you mean by fiery rhetoric in my campaign stops. I have been very demonstrative in criticizing a number of people, including in the news media. I have been very fiery in criticizing my opponent, who quite frankly is finding it hard to tell the truth, both in his ads and in his campaign about himself. And I've been very fiery about making a demonstrative statement about the direction that this state needs to continue to go in. We have been on a great track since 2010. 2010, there was a turning point in this state where we started to turn the corner. We came from being deeply in debt to the federal government to the tune of billions of dollars, and that to now 14 years later having a $5 billion surplus that is growing and being the number 2 business destination in this nation. We were number 1 for 2 years running. My fiery rhetoric is because I believe in the people of this state. And I believe that the way that this state will be greater is if we are choosing candidates and voting for people who, number 1, believe in great policy, and number 2, believe in the people of this state. Not in the bureaucrats in Raleigh, not in the guys sitting in the seats in the Senate and the House. Those are great people, don't get me wrong, they're great people. But the real energy in the state are the people of the state. And in order to make this state great, you need somebody in the governor's mansion, in those Senate seats, in those House seats, that are going to be willing to stand up for those folks and say what's necessary to make sure that that energy is released. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate.
What do you got?
I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything that has been left on the table for you that you want to talk about?
Anytime. I don't think so. I think that's it.